Welcome to Empowering Vibes, the show that supports you to create an extraordinary life. My name is Hannah Wiss, and I'm your host, life coach, certified yoga teacher, and founder of Yoga Junkies, a yoga lifestyle brand for on and off the mat. In this show, I will talk with inspiring guests who share their knowledge and story about topics such as mindset, mental health, mindfulness, healing, passion, and spirituality. I will also be guiding you through meditations and teach you the tools and tactics to heal your heart, follow your intuition, connect with your true authentic self, and learn how to turn your dreams into reality. So, are you ready to shine your light?
We are heroes and dreamers. We are restless believers, stronger than ever.
Hello, you beautiful soul. It is so amazing that you are here and that you're joining the incredible conversation with my guest today, who is Sara Louieiro. Sara is a certified business coach for women who are on a mission to make an impact in the world while earning big money, all while living a freedom-based lifestyle. In this interview, Sara shares with you how she overcame anxiety, how she built a successful online business, and how you can have the courage to live your dream life. I am so excited and deeply grateful to have such a wise and inspiring guest on the show today. Sara, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Empowering Vibes.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. And I would like to start with your personal journey because you started your business in 2015. What did your life look like before that? And what inspired you to start the adventurous journey of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting story, and it dates way back into, I would say, maybe like 2010, 2011. And for me, I never really thought I could even be an entrepreneur. It's kind of funny because my dad was always an entrepreneur. He always owned his own business, but my parents would always tell us, me and my sister, that we should, get government jobs, my dad was always like, entrepreneurship isn't steady. It's not stable. I always have to work a lot some months and then I have to save for the other months. And so he didn't really paint a pretty picture of it. But it's also interesting because in his doing and in his actions, he did paint a pretty picture of it, right? He was able to travel whenever he wanted to. He can come home for lunch. He had so much more control of his schedule. So I think I kind of learned from that in like a very different way. And so going back to 2010, 2011, like I said, I was really just ridden with anxiety. It was a really difficult time in my life. I was doing my master's degree at the time. And I just remember like having shortness of breath almost all the time. And I was kind of isolated. I was obviously going through a lot, right? Because it was increased anxiety at that specific point in time. I had anxiety ever since I was 16. But at that specific point in time, I was like, okay, you know what? Something's got to give. I see that people around me aren't this anxious and they aren't that scared to kind of just like go out in public or to have conversations. Why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? And so I started understanding that wasn't really a normal way to live. And from there, I started, I finally gained the courage to go to therapy. And when I started to go to therapy, it was like this huge weight came off of my shoulders. And I was like, oh my goodness, right? And around the same time, I was also struggling a lot with acne. I had unexplained acne on my forehead. I had like a lot of stomach issues. I had a lot of digestive issues. I suffered from IBS. And so I started going to a naturopathic doctor, and it was really interesting because I had never done any of these things before. I was never the type of person who was like, oh yeah, nature, like natural remedies is the way to go. And I remember one of them once being like, okay, have you done, yoga and meditation? And I was just like, well, yeah, I've been doing yoga ever since I was 17, but I've never really done the meditation part. And when they started to kind of show me the mind-body connection of life, I was like, oh my goodness, right? My anxiety started to go away. My acne started to go away. I started to heal up my digestion. And it was just like the most incredible feeling. I was like, wait, so you don't actually have to feel bad throughout your entire life, right? You don't have to suffer. You don't have to go through these things. And it wasn't until I would say like my second therapist, or I actually think it was my naturopath at the time, we were talking about income. And I was kind of thinking about, like switching jobs because I wasn't really happy in my job. And she was like, well, have you ever thought about doing a side hustle? And I was like, no, what's a side hustle? At the time, I think that was probably like maybe 2012, 2013. And so she was talking to me about, potentially starting a blog or something like that. And I was like, in my head, I was like, those things don't make any money, right? Like online businesses don't make any money. But she really planted the seed for me in that. And so it was a process for me where I realized the power of specific therapies to change my life. And then I was like, okay. Then someone else told me, okay, well, have you thought about a side hustle, side income? And I was just like, well, no, but planted the seed. And then another mentor of mine asked me, where do you see yourself ideally? What's your ideal life? What can you see for yourself? And all I saw for myself was a woman meditating on the side of a rock once. And I was like, this is really weird. I don't even meditate, right? I don't even know what this is. This peaceful life is totally not my life. But it was there. And I was like, maybe this is kind of like my intuition being like, this is what you need to go back to. And from there, I kind of started to put two and two together. And I started to ask myself, okay, well, what is it that I want to do? Right? Maybe it's not applying to all these other jobs, because I was applying to jobs like almost on a daily basis to try to get out of what I was doing. And I realized that maybe it's not about starting another job. Maybe it is starting a business. And I got my yoga teacher training back in 2014. In 2015, I started a business, and I didn't even realize at the time that I was starting a business. But I started teaching private yoga. I started teaching yoga in a few different studios in Toronto. And then I realized that I had a business because I was like, oh, I'm making money, right? I guess I need to talk to my accountant and see how this is going to work. And from there, I started realizing that I could, start doing this online. I hired some mentors to do it online. And within 3 weeks of hiring one of my mentors, I had 3 one-to-one clients that were on a package with me. Within a few months, I was fully booked. I started releasing passive income programs. And by the end of 2017, I was making a consistent enough income to quit my 9-to-5. So that's my story of entrepreneurship. I know it's like really long, but I feel like especially for people, hopefully for people in your community, they really resonate with all of that, because it wasn't just one day I decided to start a business. It was really like a gradual process of understanding what it was that I want to do and where I was stuck.
Beautiful. It's an amazing journey. And I think like lots of people listening can put themselves in your shoes and kind of like the whole thing, like, okay, different job should I do? How did you grow so quickly that you managed to finally quit your 9-to-5 and then like even further to in the end coach people yourself?
Yeah, I think it's really incredible the power that you can have when you realize that you want to go all in. And for me, I think it was like right at the end of 2015 or right at the end of 2016, I found myself in this place where I was just like, you know what, I see all of these other people doing it. And I got really frustrated because I was just like, all of these other people doing it, why can't I do it? Why can't I have that same luck? And I realized that it wasn't luck. I realized that all of these people were just risking it. They were putting both feet in. They were going all in. And so it was one day where I was just like, go big or go home, right? You either got to go for it completely. And if you fail, you knew that you went for it completely, or you just stopped trying. And I knew that I couldn't let myself stop trying. I knew I had to go all in. And I also knew that what brought me to that specific place even was all of the mentorships that I had in the past, right? If it wasn't for my first therapist that I hired, in university, in my master's program, I wouldn't have understood what was going on with my anxiety, right? If it wasn't for my naturopath, I wouldn't have understood what was going on with my body, the mind-body connection. And so business was another facet of that. It was another facet of, okay, well, I clearly don't understand this enough on my own. I need to hire someone else to do it and to help me with it. And it was really I just need to go all in and I need to see whether or not this works. And once I started doing that, I started doing things that were like, previous me would have been like, those things are crazy. You're going to fail. You can't do that. Right. But because I had done so much personal development, so much work on myself and so much money mindset as well, I was able to, create the right investments in my business. And the right investments really allowed me to get more clients in, get more passive income in, all of those things. And eventually in 2018, I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if I want to teach yoga online anymore. I was really exhausted with it. I wanted to dive so much deeper into different skill sets. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, you have the yoga business, it's running, it's going really well, right? So we can keep the yoga business. We can start doing the business coaching business because this is what you really want to do. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. The yoga business is still here. So I was at one point in time, I was running ads for both businesses. I had a membership site going for my yoga business. And then I started doing the business coaching, and the business coaching just completely took off within that point in time. And a few months later, I was just like, I can't do both anymore. I really have to let go of one of them. And then I just kind of went full time in business coaching. And then that just kind of grew from there. But really, I would say one of the biggest ways I was able to grow so quickly is just put a lot more risk and put a lot more of my own personal conviction in what I was doing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. For somebody listening who also dreams of having his own business, starting an NGO, moving to his dream location, changing his profession, or whatever the person wants to do, whatever their heart desires, how can we get the courage to follow our dreams and truly make them our reality?
I love that question. So one thing that I always go by, and it might feel like a little bit morbid, but it rings so true to me. Right? It really sits really, really well with me. I don't know if you know of the 5 Regrets of the Dying. I can't remember who wrote it.
Yeah, I do know it, but I didn't read it.
So I've just I haven't actually read the entire book, but I've read a lot of synopsis about it. Right. And, one of the deep regrets is I wish that I had lived a life that was more true to myself. Right. And not to what other people expected of me. Right. One of them is I wish I had kept more in touch with my friends. Another one was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. There was a lot of really deep things. And so as I read through those things, I was just ooh, these really hit hard. And for me personally, what I always love to think about is, okay, in 5 years from now, am I going to regret not doing this? Right. Or am I going to be so happy that I did this? Am I going to be so happy that I took this risk? And I think that each and every one of us has that decision inside of ourselves. And there's nothing like understanding that you don't have an infinite amount of time in this world to really help you make those decisions and understand that, really, for me, I stayed at that job for 6.5 years. It was a long time. 6.5 years is a really long time to be at a job that it's not that I hated it. I was doing really well in it. I had a really great supportive manager, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I knew it wasn't my purpose. But I stayed there for so long because I was so afraid. I was so afraid of what other people thought of me. I was afraid of spending money on something else and not having it work out. But I really do feel once you ask yourself, okay, what is it that I really want to do 10 years from now, 5 years from now? What do I want to look back on and be so grateful that I did for myself and for my family or whoever else it is that you are, living for? What is it that you want to be proud of? Right. And I think that we all feel like we have so much time, and that's why so many of us sit on the fence with so many things. And once you realize that you really don't have a lot of time. I think that that's one of the greatest gifts, is to understand that time itself is truly a gift. So how do you want to utilize that time? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I truly got goosebumps all over your answer. And now that you said it, I do know these 5. And I remember the first time that I heard them, I was like, oh, wow, yes. And they also truly touched me. So thank you so much for sharing them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like
I remember when
I feel like we also need to give credit where credit is due, right? We're talking about the 5 regrets of the dying. I feel like I want to like do a quick Google search and find out exactly who wrote this book so we can talk about it on the
I
podcast.
think wasn't it a nurse?
It was a nurse. So maybe
who wrote
you can
it,
put it in the show notes, right?
Yes, I will. Yes, that's a very great idea because that book, I did read the book, but I also heard it, I think through a podcast or something like this. And they also mentioned like the regrets that people had. And I know each one truly touched me
It's
too.
so good.
So yes, I will put them in the show notes and I will add that to my book list for sure too. What I wanted to ask is, I remember when I started my business, or also when I first showed up on Instagram, when I taught my first yoga class, whatever it was, I was so full of self-doubt. How would you say can we create true confidence from within, especially when we're starting something new?
Okay, so one thing that I love to explain to my clients is that the reason why we don't have confidence a lot of the times is because of our inner child. It's because of all of the things that we were made to believe about ourselves, right? And a lot of people, especially coaches, who is primarily who I work with and primarily who my clients are, they'll end up being like, okay, I need to fix that first, right? Like I need to be confident before I can actually go out there. Versus confidence, what I see confidence as is actually a muscle that you strengthen over time. And one thing that I love saying as well is that, okay, well, you might have all of these things that you feel insecure about or self-conscious about or doubtful about. But what about the unique message that you're providing to people, right? Is that something that comes from a place of lack of confidence? Is that message something that is doubtful? And most of the time, it's not, right? The message that you're carrying out, the message that you want to bring out to people is something that's very pure. It's something that doesn't have, like the little girl inside of you that was so afraid of, like people making fun of her, let's say, for example. And so when you can really separate yourself from your message, and the way that I love to say this as well is that, like, if you can think of yourself as a vessel for change, right? And if you can think of the message as something that's kind of just channeled through you, it's just like, okay, well, I'm just the messenger, right? It's not about me. It's not about me and my lack of confidence or my self-doubt and all of these things. It's the message that is coming through me. It's the message that I have been given. So for me, for example, the message that I had been given was anxiety doesn't need to run your life. You can do yoga and meditation and you can completely transform your life. You can completely transform the relationship with yourself. So do I feel super confident? Well, maybe no, right? Like maybe I have a lot of past history of me not being able to do specific things or specific things not going my way. But when I think about the message and how it's not about me, it's about that purpose, then it becomes so different because then it's just like, okay, well, not showing up because of my lack of confidence is actually selfish. Right. And then you completely change the story. And I really do feel like that gives so many of us an inner strength that we didn't know that we had because it's not just about us anymore.
When I founded my company, Yoga Junkies, I think it was a Marie Forleo episode. And in it, she said, you got to make your mission more important than your insecurities. And I remember taking a screenshot, printing it, and I put it on my screen, and I saw it every day. And truly that, which, the mission, the message, is kind of like all the same. That gave me actually always the strength to start this podcast, to show up on Instagram, to do whatever I'm doing, because exactly how you say, I always feel like it's not about me. It's about what I want to tell people, what I want to transport to people, and what I want them. I want to like the service to them so they learn and they can improve their life.
And that's such a nice way to sum it up too. Marie Forleo. Good job there.
I always as she said, simplify to amplify. That's exactly what I did with that quote. I love her so
She's
much.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. I would like to talk also a little bit about your private life, because in your story, I read that when you quit your 9-to-5 job, you made a super bold move and you sold all your belongings in Toronto and you moved to a beautiful piece of land on the edge of a waterfall in Nicaragua. Do you want to tell us more about what moved you to this decision and how your phase of this life looked like?
Oh my goodness. It was like one of the most terrifying things that I think I've ever done. And it's so funny because I think that, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago, I would have never been capable of doing that. And it was, I mean, I was at my job, like I said, I was at my job for 6.5 years. My parents live in Canada. My entire family lives between Canada and Portugal. And, you know, I'm not from Nicaragua. My husband is from Nicaragua. And so his family lives here. And when I first came here in 2008, when I met him, I remember one of my friends always telling me, you're going to live here one day. And I was like, I would love to, but I have no idea how I would ever make that happen. Right. And I was just like, this just seems like a dream, right? What she was telling me. And from the business, I mean, my husband and I always talked about moving here one day. It was always this like one day thing. And it was always this like, we're going to do it for retirement type thing. And it came to the point where it was, and I would do all my calculations in my notebook. I'd be like, okay, we're going to be earning this much. We're going to be, you know, saving this much and like all of these things. So in 10 years, we're going to be able to move. And then through the online business and kind of the income that was generated, it was just like, okay, 10 years became 5 years became 3, 2. And then it was like, oh, we're going to move at the end of the year. And I had made that decision for myself because I was just like, there was, you know, I need to do this. And I need to do this for myself. My husband was also not super happy in his work. His parents had always owned a business here. They owned an organic farming cafe. So it was a really, really dreamy situation there, although he never really worked with them. But I still remember making the decision and starting to talk to people about the decision, but feeling like it's not real yet, right? Like it's not actually real. I can still change my mind, right? Like this is just me talking. But then I was literally, I had everything lined up for it. And so I remember talking to my in-laws about it and then talking to my parents about it. And then it came to the point where I needed to give my notice at my job, book a one-way ticket to Central America, and give my notice at my apartment. And it was almost like an out-of-body experience with all of these things. Because I was just like, this isn't actually happening, right? I remember sitting with my HR professional at my job after I had spoken to my manager and I cried together because she was just like, you're going to be doing such great things with your life. You know, like, I'm so happy for you. But I sat with my HR and he was just like, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you do this, you're not going to be able to come back. He's just like, we really like you here. You know, like you can always just, why don't you take a stress leave? Like I can do something else for you. And I was like, how, like, although it's so tempting for me to do that, so tempting to be like, yeah, sure, I'll just take a stress leave. I knew that I couldn't just do some sort of sabbatical or something like that. I knew it had to be full on. It couldn't be something where I was just like, okay, I'm going to take this little leave and maybe I'm going to come back. Because I needed to go all in. And so I was like, you know what? No, I'm not. Left a job of 6.5 years to move to the tropics and have a yoga and wellness business. And when I gave my notice for my apartment, once again, it was such an out of body experience. When I booked a one-way flight to Central America, it was such an out of body experience. And then everything just kind of started happening. And one thing after the other, I remember it was like 1:00 in the morning, the night before our flight, and we still hadn't gotten rid of all of our stuff. So we were still like, luckily we had friends in the building. So I kept on bringing things to them. I'm like, do you want these? Because I don't have any room for these in my luggage. And like all of this food, like supplements, all of these things where I was just like, I can't bring this. I remember my husband bought this really, really nice pillow and we had to put it on the edge of one of our backpacking backpacks. So like we clasped it on and we clasped running shoes onto our backpacks as well because we couldn't fit everything. But it was also the most freeing experience when I landed, because we ended up landing in Costa Rica. And I just I landed in Costa Rica and I almost cried because I was just like, what did I do? Right? How am I here? And then, I gave myself 1 year. So I told myself, at least stay 1 year. You know that you can. You know you can support yourself financially for a year. And then if it doesn't work out, it's okay. At least you tried, right? It's been 4.5 years. And so I think we're good. I think it worked out.
You just moved me so much because we have so many similarities in our whole story. And my husband and I also just sold we left our apartment, sold everything we had. And on the 5th of September, we're flying to Bali. And it's truly, I remember all the feelings as well. Like, oh my gosh, what we're doing, we're crazy. Everybody else is building a house, getting kids, and we're moving to Bali. And then also the freedom that comes with it and the excitement. And truly when you said you arrived in Costa Rica and almost cried, teared up, I just almost teared up because I feel you so much. And I feel this roller coaster of emotions
it's
much.
Incredible. It's such an incredible experience. And I mean, on the flip side, financially, it's just a lot easier to, live in a tropical country most of the time. And so, but also freedom, right? The freedom that you're going to experience in Bali, to me, I'm so excited for you because it's a different kind of freedom. It's a different kind of way of living. And, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that, 5 years ago, I made this decision.
Yes. Do you sometimes do the whole time traveling thing, kind of with your future self? What would your future self advise you or something? Or kind of looking back on your past self and be like, oh my gosh, I am so proud of you that you had this bold move, that you made this bold move, that you had the courage to do this and that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of me growing into where I am now was utilizing future self. That really, really helped me. Doing my future self meditations, I do them with all my clients now too, just because I find it so helpful. And I would always see, future self was doing yoga in the morning, and future self was taking on coaching calls all day, and traveling, planning travels. And it's funny because this is literally my life right now, and it has been my life for a few years now. But I remember, back in 2015, 2016, I was just can I actually do this? Right? Is this going to be possible for me? And I mean, it absolutely was. And I find myself just kind of going back and being like, man, you were gutsy, right? That took a lot for you to be able to do. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of, 2017, 2016, Sara, and even 2010, 2011, Sara, because I feel like that's when it started, right? That entire time in my life where I decided, I'm no longer going to be dictated by what's going on internally. I want to find out the answers to these things. And, 2011, Sara, who stepped into therapy for the first time, she's the one who changed everything, that version of me really started to change the whole dynamic and the whole course of the book, right? And if it wasn't for her, 2017 Sara, who quit her 9-to-5, wouldn't have been able to be there.
Beautiful. This is amazing. Did you actually ever, I know from the people that I'm talking to and all these things that lots about mental health issues, there's so much shame around it all because, especially in our modern society, it's everybody shows his perfect life and everybody's always smiling, everybody's always happy. And that's kind of what social media sometimes displays to us. And I think with that comes a lot of shame around mental health problems. Did you struggle with them too? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I've been quite vocal about anxiety. I mean, thankfully now I almost don't get it anymore. It's pretty rare for me to kind of have any attack or anything like that. And I've never really had medically diagnosed anxiety attacks or anything like that. It's more of sometimes I'm I feel really uneasy. What is going on? But I've been pretty vocal about it just because I find it's really helpful. And I think that a lot of people think that they have to have everything well put together and can't have, like, can't suffer from depression, can't suffer from anxiety, can't suffer from anything in order to be really, really successful. And I love kind of being that inspiration for other people who are going through something similar, in that, I had a ton of anxiety in 2017 when I was quitting my 9-to-5. And I still had anxiety when I'd like show up for sales calls or show up for live streams and things like that. But I still did it. Right. And I was still successful with it. And in terms of the shame aspect, I mean, the shame was really what didn't allow me to seek the support for so long. Right. Like, I didn't have a family who even appreciated personal development, and didn't really believe in mental health issues at all. And so for me, it took a really long time to even be open to the world of personal development. But the minute that I did, I felt like I was coming home to myself, and I felt like I was really doing something for me. And so for anyone who's kind of experiencing shame around it all, I mean, to me personally, I feel like the only thing that really happens when you do therapy and personal development and just really accept and acknowledge your, your mental health struggles, is you become a stronger person, and you become, a better version of you once you start understanding how to deal with it, how to accept yourself, and how to love yourself unconditionally from that place. And I mean, of course, there's a lot of shame in our society around it, especially for males, I think, too. I think females, we're more susceptible, or like I think there's been like more of an open door for us to like truly, dive into all of this. But I would say that it's only going to make you stronger. Like really diving into it and accepting it. And like I said, it felt like a coming home for me all of those years ago when I finally decided to understand it and accept it. And it felt like a whole new world that I was never exposed to. And I think a part of me also didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And a part of me didn't think I was worthy of experiencing really great things. And so for anyone who is struggling, you are 100% worthy of also experiencing really, really great things in your life, and living a life free of, so many of the struggles that you probably have.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I find it's so important that we are vulnerable and we share like where we struggle and so on, because I feel like this all brings us together closer. And especially if somebody's struggling, listening right now and struggling himself or herself, this is what gives hope. And it's hope that is kind of like the conduit for miracle, and that brings us through these times. And that's why it's so important that you share this so vulnerably, so that I can pronounce it. So I truly appreciate it. And I want to thank you really from the bottom of my heart for sharing this so honestly. I feel like sometimes before anxiety, a step before is overwhelm. And, so many of us have family, work, maybe even a business, all our duties, household, maybe social media. There's so much we got to do. What are your tips to kind of like deal with overwhelm?
That's actually a really good point too. The reason why I'm always like, when people are like, how did you start your business? The reason why I'm always like, okay, let's go to the beginning, is because it's such a process, right? And one of the reasons why I was struggling with anxiety is exactly what you're saying. It was overwhelm. And it wasn't just an overwhelm of having to do too many things. It's not that I was super busy. It was that there were so many emotional commitments that I felt like I had to be making on a daily basis. And those emotional commitments were actually what was giving me the most anxiety. And so one of my mentors used to tell me, your anxiety is trying to tell you something, like it's a teacher, right? And that really helped me, because I was like, oh, you mean it's not something that I just need to like put in my closet and be like, get out of here, right? Like it's something that is it's telling me something. It's almost warning me about something. And what I realized was it was warning me that these were things that I didn't want to do, right? Like I was saying yes to so many different things, and I didn't want to do them. I really didn't want to do them. I would rather be at home by myself. And I think that when we go through a lot of that process of almost like up-leveling our personal development and just like up-leveling our own consciousness and our own worthiness, what ends up happening is we end up saying no to a lot more things. And a lot of people around us don't understand it. And I did lose a few friends while I was going through that. And it is hard, right? And it's hard because I think a lot of people, if they're already expecting you to be the person who's there, picking up the pieces for everything, once you stop doing it, a lot of people get really defensive about it and really aggressive with it. And a huge part for me to even be able to do my yoga teacher training, I still remember this, I had to start saying a no to a lot more things. And so I was working my 9 to 5. I remember one time I was working my 9 to 5, I was training for a half marathon, and I was volunteering at this organization, at this local organization. And my volunteering at this local organization was really, I want to say tough. Like we had monthly meetings. I was, or I don't know if they were weekly meetings. I can't remember now. But there were a lot of meetings that I'd go to. There was a lot of work that I was doing for this organization. And I remember thinking to myself that they need me, right? Like they need me. You can't leave because they need you. Because if it's not you, then like no one else is going to come because no one else is going to be as passionate about this. And then I remember I'd be like, but no, this isn't actually the thing that I want to do. And if someone else cannot take on this role, then it can't be my responsibility anymore. It can't just be about me, because I know that I no longer want to take on this role because I know where I want my energy to go. And I think that with overwhelm, it's often about not being able to say no. And not being able to really decipher and differentiate like what you want to do based on versus what you feel obligated to do. And for me, when I first started doing my yoga teacher training, I completely said, I'm not doing this volunteer work anymore. And it was, it hurt and it was painful. And I'm sure that it was painful for everyone in the organization. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad that I did it because once again, I did it for me, right? I didn't only do it for me, I did it for my future self and everything that I've been able to create since then, right? And I started saying no to a lot of other commitments. Like I remember one of my very, very close friends, she got married and she asked me to be a bridesmaid. And I finally, I don't know if you've ever had that time where someone's like, be a bridesmaid for me. And you're just like, oh my God, that's so much work, right? Like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it, but everyone says yes. And I sat down with her and I had a conversation with her. And instead of just saying yes, I said, I would love to. I would be so honored to do this for you and with you. But these are my stipulations in my own life, right? Like these are the things that I'm willing to do. And these are the things that I'm unwilling to do because I simply don't have the time for them. And I want to make sure that my energy is going to the right places. And so at the end of that conversation, I asked her, if you still want me to be one of your bridesmaids, I will be happy to. And I will promise you that I will, help you and support you 100% on your day. And after that conversation, she was just like, that's totally fine. I get it. Like you don't have to do all of these other things with me. And it felt really good. And it felt really good to communicate those boundaries. And so overwhelm exists. Absolutely. It is a huge part of the anxiety. I think that was so good with what you said. And I think that to really overcome it, one thing that's helped me is understanding where I want to place my boundaries. Because even when I see the people that I work with going into their businesses, I also coach them around these things as well, right? Because I don't think everyone kind of goes through the trajectory that I came from, which is like, healing myself and then doing yoga and wellness and then transitioning into coaching. I already had so many these things under my belt. And sometimes it's not necessarily that you can't do something because you're too overwhelmed. Sometimes it's that you really want to do that thing. And the overwhelm that you're feeling is from things that you don't actually want to be doing. And you just need to say no.
Thank you for sharing this so boldly. This is amazing. I heard last week in a podcast, like a no to somebody or something else is a yes to myself. And that stuck with me. And I found this so beautiful. And I agree with you 100% that this is the reason for overwhelm. And I know lots of people struggle with like people pleasing and these things. So especially with the example that you brought, this is very beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing it. I would like to talk with money about you because you managed to create a six-figure business, and you were even guiding your clients to do the same. And how would you say, can we create a positive relationship to money so money is like flowing in our businesses, in our bank accounts, just to us?
Ooh, such a big topic and such a great topic. I actually have done like entire like week-long money trainings as well, just because I feel like it's so important. But most of us, the way that we go along with our lives is, money is scarce. And what we do is the reason why I do this is like, it's a closed fist, right? It's just like money is scarce. There's not enough to go around. I'm never going to have enough money. And what we create for ourselves is a reality where it's just like money is scarce. I'm never going to have enough money. There's not enough money to go around. And then we start making decisions based off of that place, right? And I was 100% like that. And I think one of the most interesting things about money mindset is it really is not about how much money you have in your bank account. It is never about how much money you have in your bank account or how much debt that you have. It's all about what's going on in here. And so when I even had money in my bank account, I was still like, I can't afford anything, right? Like I can't possibly afford to do this. I can't invest in my business. I can't. And it was always, I can't. And when I first was exposed to quote unquote money mindset, that's when I was like, oh, you mean that this isn't just like something that everyone has in their head, right? Like this isn't just like the way that everything needs to be. And I started to realize that the more I let go of my clenched fist, the more that I could attract money to me. And I think especially in entrepreneurship, the way it works is that when you have a clenched fist and you own a business, you're constantly clenching your fist, right? And a clenched fist isn't open to receive, right? So clenched hands aren't open. So what ends up happening is like attracts like, right? We talk about law of attraction all the time. And so you end up attracting people into your business who are also money scarce. And you end up attracting people who are just like, oh, I can't afford this. And because you have also never dealt with this yourself, then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, yeah, that person can't afford it. Okay, yes. Like there's not enough money to go around. I need to lower my prices again. I need to offer discounts or whatever it is. But when you function from a place of there's more than enough money to go around, and every time that I'm going to put money out there, it's going to come back, you also create pathways in your brain and you create decisions in your life that are going to reflect that. And when you make decisions in your life based off of there's more than enough money to go around, you take actions based off of that too. And when you take actions based off of a certain thing, it always comes back to you. And so it's interesting because I have clients who are still money scarce, right? And what I always say is you can create $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month, whatever. And you're always going to have the same thought in your head because it's not about how much money you make. It's about your thought. And I never really understood this. Even before I was making 10K months, let's say, for example, I remember one of my mentors being like, Sarah, the minute that you make 10K months, you're going to be thinking the same thing. You're going to be like, there's not enough. It's getting eaten up too quickly. There's not enough to go around because it's not actually about the money that you're making. And I was like, no, 10K months is going to solve all of my problems. What are you talking about, right? Like if I just have enough money, it's going to solve all my problems. And then lo and behold, 10K months happened and I was like, so I still can't buy that designer bag, right? Or I still can't do these things. And and I've even gotten up to multiple six figures a year in my business. And it wasn't until I started to hit like a $20,000 a month mark where I was like, oh my God, it's just like everyone told me, right? It is not going away. This whole mindset trap is not going away. And one of the best ways that you can really combat it is understand that it's there, but make decisions from the place of where you want to be and where you want to go with your money. And I know that for myself, every single time that I make a decision based off of where I want to go, I'm always rewarded with the place that I want to go to because I'm creating actions from that place. I'm creating and I'm making decisions based off a place of certainty in the future that I want to create for myself. And when we constantly make decisions based off of the places that we were, we keep on getting the exact same thing. So we keep on getting where we were and where we are, where we were and where we are, because that's where our decisions are going. And one of the best ways that I love to really challenge my money mindset is saying, okay, well, how good could it get? Right? How good can I allow it to get? And when I make decisions on how good can I allow it to get, then I take the action based off of that place, and then it gets better. And then things like you said, how were you able to grow your business so quickly in the beginning? It's because of that decision-making process, right? Of course, it's terrifying, and yes, it's risky. And it's not every single day that you're going to be making more and more. A lot of the times you are going to be losing money as well. But once again, when you lose money, it's not like, oh my God, I need to hold on to it all. That's okay. It comes and goes, right? I trust that it's going to come back. And so really operating from that place, I think the very first place that it comes from is that intuitive, like, am I closing my fists and am I just afraid? And where can I let go? And where can I open up and allow myself to receive and allow it to circulate?
I love this picture that with a clenched fist, you can't receive. Like, that is beautiful. And actually, the shows, kind of like what you're explaining, money and so on, it seems like spirituality is very close to your business and to you. Yeah. What is spirituality for you?
I love all the questions that you're asking, Hannah. They're so great. You're such a great podcast host.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
So I was a born and raised Christian Catholic, and I've kind of since evolved from there to like my own understanding of what my own spirituality means to me. And so to me, it means really making sure that I'm grounding within myself with all the decisions that I make, with how I lead, how I decide to lead, how I show up as the best version of myself every day. And I really do feel like I would not have been able to quit my 9-to-5 without spirituality, without some sort of feeling inside of me that I was going to trust. And I was going to trust that there was a higher power. And I even remember like printing out my notices and stuff and being like, okay, I need to surrender, right? Like, this isn't just about me anymore. Someone else is helping me with this, because it's no longer my parents who are helping me with this. My parents don't want me to do this, right? So I know that my parents are going to come and save me. So something else here needs to give. And I started to understand that. And I started to understand that there's an innate faith that we all have inside of us, that we really need to lean on. And I just try to lean on that faith consistently. And I would also say that for someone like me, and maybe for some of your viewers, before getting into therapy and before getting into all of these things, I was just all in my masculine energy. And so masculine energy is just like systems. It's like, I don't want to say that there is no God, but masculine energy is very much, I control everything. I have the control, right? I'm going to do the systems. I'm going to get my butt up, and I'm going to do everything. Do, right? And it is great. Masculine energy is really, really great. I also don't like it when people go the other way and are just like completely void themselves of it, right? Because it's so helpful and so beneficial. But it wasn't until I started leaning in on the feminine energy, the flow, well, let's just be here for a little bit, right? Like, let's just like smell the roses. Let's, let's take the holiday, or instead of doing work all day, why don't we take a walk instead in the middle of the day? It wasn't until I started leaning on that and really grounding that I started to understand the spiritual aspect of my life. And I think that really helped to integrate things for me, where it was just like, okay, one of my favorite quotes at that time was like, relax, nothing is under control. Right? Because how true is that? Right? Like we make plans and we try to do all these things, but at the end of the day, we can't control it all. Like, we aren't in control. We are in control of like a specific piece of it. And so I always say, we're in control of 50%. God, the universe, is in control of the other 50%. And if you really just trust and also lean on that and trust in that conviction, you'll always know that you're supported. And when you always feel supported in your life, if you always feel like something out there is helping to guide you, it makes you feel that much more confident in what you're doing, because then it's not just about you. It's just like, okay, well, I trust that there's something else here with me, and it allows you to go so much further.
Absolutely. And basically, like the reason why we're so controlling is because we kind of
Right.
feel like this gives us some kind of security. And this faith, on the other hand, can give us exactly that security
Exactly.
too. I feel
Yes.
like at least that's what my experience is. And sometimes it's just more beautiful to like have the security through just having faith and believing instead of constantly doing, and like, which is kind of like, again, this clenching that
Yeah,
you
and
just
I think it's
mentioned
so
before
beautiful.
with the
Actually,
money.
one of my
So
friends in
thanks so much.
university used to say that. We used to have these like big philosophical conversations. And one thing that he would say is just like, well, you know what? You can either believe in God or not, but you know, isn't life just so much easier when you believe? Right? Like even not even just the even if God isn't real. So he was kind of talking about it that way. Even if God isn't real, how much better do you feel when you just believe and you choose to believe that something is there? And it's so true. So even just the belief is already going to create something different inside of you and create that sense of security within you. So it's not necessarily about whether or not it exists. It's your belief in terms of whether or not it exists that makes all the difference. And that's something that you can control. And I think that that's just something that's so beautiful is you it's a choice. You get to decide whether or not you want to lean into faith and lean into spirituality. And I'm sure that you've read all the personal development books as well, but any books that you read on like millionaires, you know, like millionaire mindset and all of those types of things, it's anyone who is really, really successful has a deep sense of faith. And the two go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And I feel like, as you say, it's a choice. And, there's so many people who experience suffering who are like, why me? And why does this happen to me? And all these kind of things. And they're trying to wrap their head around that. And then there are other people who experience suffering who say like, life happens for me. And this has a purpose, as painful as it is. And I can even talk from my own experience. Like, whenever I had my darkest times, I always knew that this happens through a reason. And that gave me kind of, like we mentioned before, the hope to make it through those times. And I just feel like we need this to make it through the dark times, the times where we lose somebody, where we are struggling with ourselves, with anxiety, with depression, whatever it is, and so on. I feel like this belief, and not only the belief of in a higher power, but also in the belief in like that happens for a reason, that is just what gets us through all these times where we just feel like I can't anymore. And that's why I feel like spirituality is just so important and so close
really
to my
is.
heart.
And I think it's an anchor for all of us, right? Anything that you're doing, anything that's scary, or like you said, navigating grief, there's so many different facets of life where when you have a spiritual practice, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, like a religious practice, it can be a spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be reading oracle cards either, right? It could just be like a deep sense of faith or belief. It just makes all the difference, for sure.
Absolutely. When I researched about you, I read that a successful online business, we need a combination of 3 things, which are a sharp mindset, a business strategy, and an amazing internal energetic state. What are your top tips to kind of like raise a vibration?
Yeah. So for me, first off, when I first started coming into business, I was like, it's all strategy, right? Like strategy. That's the only thing that you need. And then I started understanding, okay, so many people are talking about this mindset stuff. And I was like, okay, personal development, I get it, going into the mindset stuff. But then I didn't really understand how emotions and how feelings even play inside of things. And that's why I actually separate emotions and feelings and energy from mindset. Some people kind of keep that within mindset. But for me, mindset's kind of what's going on in your brain, and energy is more of like what's going on inside of your heart. And so what I do in terms of like raising a vibration is I focus on, like, how do I want to feel throughout the day? Danielle Laporte, who's a really, really great personal development author, one of her books, she always talks about, like, start your day with, how do I want to feel today? Right? Rather than what am I going to do today? It's how do I want to feel? Because when you're in a feeling of worthiness, when you're in a feeling of, okay, feeling really good at myself, confidence, motivation, all of those things, you're going to create decisions and then once again, take actions based off of those feelings as well. And so it's not necessarily about toxic positivity and making sure that you're feeling well all the time, but it is about accepting your feelings, accepting where you are with your feelings, and working through your feelings as well. And so in terms of raising our vibrations, one thing that I love doing is just making sure that I have some sort of movement practice in my day. I typically do my movement in the morning. So today I went cycling, and came right into recording this podcast episode. So I didn't do my yoga practice, but I usually also do a little bit of yoga right after cycling. I might do a meditation that morning, and I just make sure that I'm also eating really, really well. And so that's, to me, that's another part of energetics, is making sure that what you're consuming throughout the day is also going to make you feel high vibe, right? Because the minute that we start to eat pizza, ice cream, all of those things throughout our entire day, is like that significantly lowers our vibration. And if we think of ourselves as completely worthy beings and people who want to get into our fullest potential, diet and exercise, kind of, they really, really need to come into play to that as well. And so raising our vibrations that way is really, really helpful. I also find that, like, even before doing a live stream or like a training or a sales call or whatever, even just sometimes doing jumping jacks and understanding how there's a connection between your mind and your body, right? And that connection creates that emotional connection as well. It's just really incredible. And so we can feel so terrible one moment and then listen to music and then have that music carry us through into a completely different state. Or we can feel really sluggish and tired and then do some jumping jacks or do a handstand. And then all of a sudden, our state is different, right? And I mean, you do yoga as well. So it's the difference between just like sitting down and then one day doing a wheel, right? Like, your heart openers create more confidence and they give you that sense of confidence. And so it's really understanding, to me, energetics is so much of that mind-body connection and making sure that we're regulating our emotions throughout our days as well, and how regulating our nervous system and stepping into those higher states of consciousness and also those higher energetic vibrations can help us create decisions and actions based off of those higher energetic vibrations as well. And that's not something, the reason why I separate it is because I really don't believe that that's something that you can just get in therapy, right? Or like just get in coaching calls. It's not just like a talking back and forth type of thing that happens. It's a moving thing. It's a part of your movement. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I agree 100% that it's not only like as much as the mind influences the body, it's the other way around. Like once we stand up straight or like do a power pose even or something, like that influences our mind and like how we're feeling and so on. So I agree 100%. And thank you so much for these beautiful tips. Before I ask my last question, I have a question that I like to ask every guest, which is, let's say you can turn back the hands of time and you meet your 18-year-old self. And you're allowed to share 3 wisdoms. What would you say?
18-year-old self. I know that self so well. I feel like you're smarter and wiser than you give yourself credit for, I think is one. Especially because as 18-year-olds, we're always taught that we don't know anything. We knew a lot. We knew a lot at that specific point in time. Let's see here. I think you're doing a great job and you can't mess up, I think is another really, really great one. I think life isn't really what everyone is telling you that it is. And you know the truth. I think it's a really great one too for an 18-year-old, especially because, I mean, you're coming out of like a little cocoon of what parents and society tells you. And at that point in time, you're already starting to question things, but you don't quite know. And so just kind of understanding that not everything is as everyone says it is, I think is just really great, because it's a really great time of exploration in someone's life too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. My last question, where do people find you if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to work with you, if they want to listen to your podcast?
Yes. So
how
I
can
have my
people
own
find
podcast.
you?
It's called the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. So I do a lot of energetics, mindset, and strategy in there. So if you're listening to a podcast, chances are you probably like podcasts. If you have your own online business and want to join my Facebook group, I have a Facebook group called Fearlessly Free and Wealthy Coaches. Or you can find me at my website, Sara J. Loureiro. So Sarah was without an H. I'm sure we'll put that in the show notes. SarahJLoureiro.com. My Instagram handle is Sara J. Loureiro. And you can also find me on Facebook, Sara J. Loureiro. Keep it nice and simple for everyone.
I will link everything in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your wisdom with us. I enjoyed this beautiful conversation so much. And I'm so deeply grateful for you being here and you spending your time with us and just really sharing your journey, your vulnerabilities. So
and thank you so much for having me
really
and for asking such great questions. And I really hope that everyone got some great stuff out of this.
Now I would like to know from you what was the one thing that you learned today and how can you take it into action starting now? Leave a comment below or hop over to Instagram at Empowering Vibes and leave a comment on the post of today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would love to connect with you on a more personal level on Instagram at Empowering Vibes, where you will receive daily inspiration and more insights on how you can turn your dreams into reality. If you want to dive even deeper into becoming your best self and you would like my support, check out my website, empoweringvibes.com. Be sure to subscribe to Empowering Vibes so you don't miss a single episode. And if you like the show, share it with someone who's looking to live an extraordinary life. Thank you so much for being part of this beautiful community. I'm sending you so much love and a big hug. And never forget to shine your light.